All right, listen up. Because what's unfolding right now, quietly, globally, is not just economic policy, it's a war on the dollar, and it's getting deadly. It all started with a decision, a bold, reckless decision. When the G7, led by the United States, froze Russia's foreign reserves, the message was loud and clear. If we don't like you, we'll take your money. That was the shot heard around the financial world. And make no mistake, this wasn't just about punishing Putin, it was about trust or the destruction of it. And when Biden signed off on that freeze, he may have struck the first real blow to the US dollar's global dominance. But here's the twist. Trump didn't reverse it. He didn't unwind it. Instead, he went in harder, with tariffs, with threats, with more economic warfare. And now, the world is responding. Foreign investors still hold nearly $19 trillion in US stocks, another $7 trillion in treasuries, and $5 trillion in credit assets. That's a staggering amount of faith in American financial stability. But here's the thing, that faith is cracking. And every new tariff, every new sanction, every weaponized policy is driving a wedge deeper between America and the very financial system it built. Trump loves to rail against the trade deficit, but he forgets one crucial detail. The US has a massive capital account surplus. Translation? America lives off other people's money. Their investment in US debt, their belief in the safety of the dollar, that's what has kept borrowing costs low for decades. But what happens when that belief dies? Let's talk about Brazil. A quiet financial revolution is brewing. For decades, emerging economies like Brazil borrowed in US dollars. It was the norm. Safer, easier, more liquid. But now, Brazil is eyeing something else. Panda Bonds. Bonds denominated in Chinese yuan, not dollars. Let that sink in. That's sink. Why would Brazil ditch the dollar? Because borrowing in yuan is getting cheaper. While US yields are surging, making debt more expensive, China is slashing rates. A 10-year Brazilian bond in dollars, yielding 6.73%, the same in yuan, could go as low as 2%. That's 3 times cheaper. Now imagine you're a finance minister. Which would you choose? Exactly. And here's the real danger. If countries like Brazil begin issuing debt in yuan instead of dollars, if they begin trading in currencies other than the greenback, the US loses more than just prestige. It loses leverage. It loses the ability to borrow on the cheap. It loses the foundation of its empire. And Trump? His tariffs may look tough. They may look patriotic. But they're detonating the very ecosystem that made the dollar king. Because here's the dirty truth. Trade deficits are not just losses. They are how the dollar circulates. When Americans buy foreign goods, dollars go overseas. And then what happens? Those dollars come back to buy American bonds, stocks, and real estate. That's how the system works. But slash trade, slash the flow. The dollar stops circulating. The global demand for United States assets collapses. And then the United States has to pay more, much more, to borrow. Meanwhile, China is gearing up for a stimulus tsunami. With inflation low, dangerously low, China is ready to flood its economy with liquidity. The People's Bank of China could cut reserve requirements. They could buy bonds. They could slash rates even further, and suddenly investing in China becomes sexy, safe, profitable, a competitor to the United States financial system. Picture this, a world where investors no longer run to the dollar in times of crisis, a world where yuan bonds compete with treasuries for global capital, a world where United States borrowing costs surge, while China soaks up capital at dirt-cheap rates. That's not the future. That's next year. Now let's add more fuel to the fire. The EU wants to double down on oil sanctions. They want to cut the price cap on Russian crude from $60 to $45. They want to ban Russian pipelines completely. But who's buying that oil now? Japan. Yes, America's ally. Quietly but openly buying Russian oil for the first time in 2 years. Why? Because price matters. Because energy drives industry. And Japan isn't alone. China, Vietnam, India, all are loading up on discounted Russian energy, and as long as that oil flows, Putin gets paid. Even Japan is breaking ranks. And they're not breaking the rules, they're using a waiver granted by Biden himself. So what happens when even your friends ignore your sanctions? You lose control, you lose influence. Japan's exports are falling, steel shipments are getting crushed under Trump's renewed tariffs. They need energy. They need margins. They need to survive. So what do? They buy Russian oil. Because in this economic Hunger Games, every nation is out for itself. So this is the new reality. China is trading more with BRICS. Panda Bonds are popping up in Brazil, South Africa, even the Middle East. There's a whole network of countries ditching the dollar quietly, methodically, deliberately. And America? Well, it's still printing debt, still spending like the dollar will rule forever, but it won't. Because honestly, you can't have it all. You can't have global military dominance, endless deficit spending, low borrowing costs, and reserve currency status. Not in a fractured multipolar world. Something's got to give. So what can the United States do? Not much, except, well, the hardest thing of all. Cut spending, reduce deficits, shrink the supply of United States bonds on the market. But honestly, we all know that's not going to happen anytime soon. Not with elections looming, not with both parties addicted to debt. So here we are. The dollar is being challenged on every front: trade, bonds, energy, influence. And the next financial crisis may not start in Wall Street. It might begin in Brazil, or China, or even a G7 ally refusing to play along with United States sanctions. We are living through a slow-motion economic realignment. And if we keep pushing tariffs, weaponizing trade, and punishing countries for not obeying, well, the dollar might not survive as the global reserve. Drop your thoughts below. Do you think Brazil will issue more Panda Bonds? Will Japan keep buying Russian oil? Are we witnessing the unraveling of United States financial supremacy? Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and yeah, stay tuned. Because the next chapter in the dollar's fate is already being written. And it's not in Washington, it's in Beijing.